What is government? What is government? So government, I used to be part of it, so I can tell you. I can tell you what government is. I've even explored as to how would somebody ever let such an entity become so powerful in their life, right? And I came down to it. All right, so we all just came from somewhere, and because like Native Americans, they didn't have a government. They had an internal group of elders that helped to guide their choices and actions, and if they had a problem, they had people to talk to, right? They had the people of their tribe to consult with, and maybe somebody else in their tribe had already experienced something that they're going through, and so that kind of eases the spectrum for growth, right? I mean, it closes that gap. It makes it easier for us to grow and learn and move forward, because we don't each have to learn everything by ourselves. That would be a really, really tough deal. I love that people are different, because we can learn something from everyone. So we were all living happy, and we were putting in all these public rights of way, because you didn't want somebody trespassing across your flowers. So he said, hey, if you're going to come past my property, you got to do it right here. And people agreed, because they said that makes sense. I'm tired of people driving through my garden and across my porch too, and tearing up my lawn and running over my dog and stuff like that. So okay, so we'll put out these public rights of way. And so we got this way to get from A to B, right? And because most of us are disabled, and in certain ways, right? It's really hard for me to take all of the gear that I would like to go camping with, or to go participate in a hobby at my friend's house, or whatever, if they live several miles away. So what we do is we gather these pieces of personal property that are they look like cars or trucks or a Jeep or a motorcycle or a bicycle or a little cart that a goat pulls or whatever, right? Maybe it even looks like a backhoe or a tractor. Who knows? Whatever. It's up to you, right? Because the first law in everything is free will. Free will means that you get to choose what you do. The thing is you don't get to choose the effects of that. So if you choose to do something immoral or to harm somebody else, you don't get to choose that they might shoot you in the face, right? That's just, if somebody comes and hurts my granddaughter, there's a good chance that they're never going to do that again, right? Because that's the way it should be. You hurt somebody in my presence, and there's a good chance that you're not going to forget you doing that, because you might become disfigured if you make it out. All right. Anyway, we don't need to be going there, because I think that without people lacking accountability, most people become pretty peaceful, because when they recognize that if they steal, they might end up as pig food, or if they harm somebody, they might end up as compost. That is a pretty big motivator to be a nice person, right? I don't steal from people just because I don't like people stealing from me. I care about you. I care about other people. If I know what it's been like to work hard for what I have. I've busted my ass. Everything. My mom was mostly a single mom when I was growing up, and even then it costs a lot to live. Just to have a shelter and have food and have water available at the faucet. It costs a lot to live. And why is that? Why does it cost so much to live? Why does it cost so much? because we have government. Let me tell you, there's a lot of waste that goes on with government. And I'm not gonna go so deep into this right now, but the basis though, so government is somebody who came into our community and they set up their own place, and they said, hey, I would like to live here too, and we said, all right. And then they said, hey, y'all need to start giving me money, or I'm going to send men with guns to kick in your doors and steal your money and steal your things. And we said, whoa, all right, nope, that's not going to work. And so we burned down their place and we sent them off on their way. And then they said, whoa, hey, that sucks. All right, that doesn't work. All right, so let's try this again. So they moved into another community, and this time they said, hey, these public rights of way, I was hoping to have something delivered, and I was hoping we could call it something, and we're going to change it into instead of a right of way, we're just going to call it a roadway. But that roadway is just going to go over the top of the right of way, so that way we can name it, and so that way if I need to order something, or if I need to create order in something, I know where Johnson Avenue is, or Hillbilly Boulevard, or whatever, right? So people are like, all right, yeah, all right, we don't care about that. Yeah, if you want to name it, that's all right. We that's fine. And they said, we're willing to maintain it too. We're willing to maintain, and make it so it stays flat and that you can drive on it. Even better, because the big commercial trucks, they're getting stuck, and it's kind of slow with them going over all the washboard and potholes and all that kind of stuff. So we're gonna go ahead and pave it for you too, and we'll make sure that the folks that are doing it on commercially will follow a bunch of rules and regulations to make sure that they're going to be very, very safe on your public rights of way. People are like, all right, that sounds pretty good, because they've got some motivation to be driving fast and being in a hurry and maybe cutting people off or whatever, right? Okay, so then people started realizing that they wanted to have water delivered from somebody else because they didn't want to maintain their own well, they didn't want to carry their own water. And then their septic system backed up one time, and they said, it'd be really nice if somebody else would just take care of making sure my poop goes away. And they said, this windmill, it's just not working so much anymore. I'd rather have a meter. That meter spins, it costs me a little bit of money, but at least somebody else is providing me that service. So through becoming dependent for our utilities and our foods and our things through a centralized system, we've hired a bunch of public servants to facilitate that. But it seems that over time, the amount of rules and regulations and mandates have become increasingly restrictive on our freedom. Almost like it's turned into free dumb. Is that because schooling has gotten in the way of education? Is that because people are in such a struggle to exist that they have to work their lives away and let somebody else raise their kids? And then we're wondering where the disconnection of the families happens, because people aren't able to work together. They're working together to pay the bills, but they're not working together to build a life that they really desire, of ease and simplicity and peace, health, happiness, and abundance. Because that's our birthright. We have the ability to create whatever kind of world we want to create. And why are people homeless? Because of government regulation. I've had the government threaten me because I allowed a homeless person they called it living. I just said I was letting them fall asleep sometimes in there, They accused me of having allowing a person to live in an unapproved structure, and they were threatening me that I need to let them to come on my property so they can check. And I said, who's filed a complaint? Well, that's anonymous. I said, no, I have the right to face my accuser if something's going down. And I said, and if anybody's being harmed, there should surely be a warrant associated to your request of entrance to my property. And, so without my permission or a warrant, if you enter my property, you will be treated as a trespasser, right? And he was like, oh, well, and he's not used to people standing up to him because he's considering himself an elite. One time that same guy came marching onto my property. And I chased him off, and I told him to get the hell out of here, you tyrant. That was so funny. Yeah. Anyway, treat these people with respect when they deserve it. But admonish them when they deserve it too. They are public servants. They are not your masters. Public servants. Thank you. I mean, I was a public servant for 9 years. And then my boss was telling me to waste a bunch of money. And I'm like, whoa, wait a minute. I'm like, that money's coming from our taxes. I mean, they're pulling the taxes out of our money too, except when we're working outside of the country. Like when I was working in Saudi Arabia, and when I was working in Turkey, and when I was working in Egypt, and when I was working in other places, even though I was being paid by Uncle Sam wasn't taking any taxes out of my money because I wasn't in the continental United States. But they were wanting me to waste a bunch of your money, and my grandma's money, and my uncle's money, and my daughter's money, and stealing from the future to justify a budget that, if we're having to waste money to justify the budget, is obviously inflated. And if we're dealing with obviously inflated budgets in every organization that I worked in, it might be a problem throughout it. There is a lot of inefficiency. There is a lack of accountability. And if you say something about this while you're active duty, you get stationed in places like Minot, North Dakota, or Missouri, Whiteman, Air Force Base in Missouri, or they send you to all sorts of places. After you get 7 or 8 years invested in being a public servant, there are certain things that are no longer above your pay grade or above your need to know, or now you have a need to know, right? Because when you're a low-level public servant, you're just told, hey, go do this. And even if you didn't think it's makes sense, you just had to go do it because that's what they said, of course, right? Because somebody somewhere said so. And because somebody somewhere says so, there's some pretty evil shit being done. And so after 9 years, I decided I couldn't support that anymore. And so I got out. And now I've been spending a lot of time figuring out the roots of these problems and seeking some solutions and pathways to correct the trajectory of what the forefathers intended for this country. Like, share, and subscribe. I want to share one more closing thought. So the simplest thing that we can recognize is that we each have free will, right? We each have the ability to do with our body, our autonomy, what we choose. And if we only choose to do what we know and feel to be right, is it something you would support with your money and your time and your energy, even if you weren't being paid to do it? then that's what we do. And the first violation of the first law is the theft of consent. And theft of consent means that I'm arresting you without your willful participation, or I'm assuming of you that I can do things to you, or I'm taking away of your property, or I'm taking away what you've created. Because if you worked really, really hard, and I came and I stole everything that you made, most people would say that I'm a thief, right? So if you worked really hard, what percentage of what you make can I take without me being considered a thief, right? So the first law is free will. The first violation of the law is theft of consent. And this works on a lot of levels, because we have human rights. You don't have a constitutional right. I know you think you do, because that's what we've been told. But you don't have a constitutional right. You have a human right that is being secured if tyranny is not present by the Constitution. So the Constitution is the limitations that have been placed upon government. So, just because a governor, says that you can't have something, doesn't mean that you can't have it. Right? I mean, that not because there are limitations in what they can do and say. Well, they can say stuff, but they really can't legally do anything about it. So if they legally do something about it, then they become the criminal, right? The tyrant. So if they say that they're going to take away, just let's say, because one of the issues that's a really, really big one is gun rights. And so if people say some governor says, oh, yeah, we're not going to allow you to do this. Well, that doesn't really mean anything, because you have a human right to be able to protect yourself with the most efficient tool you know possible. And if somebody else can protect themselves with it, then so can you. Anywhere. I mean, really. I mean, that's the way it's supposed to be. I mean, it's just, right now, there is a lot of tyranny present, and we need to hold accountable those who are in the act of it. And the good news is, I think that a lot of them are doing it out of ignorance and complacency to what's always been being done, rather than what's right and what they would actually know to be right by what they would want done to them. Because a lot of the cops, they're hypocrites. They drive drunk. They're beating their wives. 40% of officers' wives are abused. There's a problem. And it's because they're in a mental gymnastics. It's hard to be a Nazi without it affecting your mentality. It's hard to be an oppressor without it oppressing you. And that's what they're having problems with. I did a ride-along a few years ago, and let me tell you, they're abusing their authority. There was a couple of guys that I rode with that were really nice, but they were also egotistical. At one point, we were driving nearly 60 miles per hour through a neighborhood with cars on both sides of the street. Yes, it was 9:30 at night, but because somebody had another one of their cops had somebody pulled over So we blasted through this neighborhood at like Mach 3, which it seemed like. I mean, it seemed like, cars just, I'm like, holy shit, there's no way I would be driving like this through a neighborhood like this, right? Unless it was just a dire emergency. I mean, it better be something really freaking big. And that's not what it was. We pulled up, like, oh, okay, that was already covered. So then we turned around and then we drove back through the neighborhood, same neighborhood, to go do some paperwork. And then we went to another call, and we were driving 90 miles per hour up Third Avenue, which that's like a 35 mile per hour zone, 35 to 40. At one time, I'm like, what the fuck is this kid doing? He's showing off. And I'm thinking he was the same kid showing off to a female ride-along. They have a cadet program. This is a few years ago. And he shot a guy because the guy was drunk, or the guy was sitting in his front seat of his car, and he didn't answer the door when he knocked on the door. And so he opened the door, and the guy kind of freaked out when the cop opened the door, and then the cop shot him. It's a sickness. There's a lot of these cops that are not being held accountable. They are investigating their own crimes, and the blue line is not supporting accountability and keeping their ranks clean. So I know this is going to cause some probably some people to say, you're a bad man. And I'm like, no, I'm sorry. I'm trying to expose the bad things that are happening, but also create solutions and pathways that we can remedy it in a most peaceful, harmonious way. So like, share, and subscribe. Share if you feel inclined, because I'm not looking for a revolution. I'm looking for a love